Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to Light Tommy C. I'm your host, Tommy Cunningham. Today's video that I would like to talk a little bit to you about is on how to use a little radio frequency that is like in the middle of, like, let's just say, for instance, your car, and you are wondering how in the world does the public get on your internet Wi-Fi? So that's our first question. So there is this thing that is called most bases right now. If you guys like work on a base, if you guys work on, like, for instance, anywhere that has top secret stuff that likes to use like internet browsers, like for instance, like doesn't allow YouTube, like for instance, China China has their own YouTube, which is really neat. Okay? So these different radio stuff that they use there at China, which which is like really different from here. Like for instance, like strangely, there in Japan, that's where the interesting radio stuff is. Because, like, for instance, they have their own radio playing there. They also use their own radio problems there. Like, for instance, sometimes the radio communication there in China are not really good. Sometimes you guys cannot sometimes you guys cannot get into it because sometimes China does not let you to get into their Wi-Fi, which I think that is like so very concerning. So, like, for instance, like two other things, like number one, if you guys use, like, for instance, like there's two options for you. Like, number one, you guys could get a VPN, which number two, you guys can get on, like, for instance, like some locations uses Bing. I know South Korea uses Battle as their main Wi-Fi hub. As for that's called their Google hotspot, which is really there. So up there in North Korea, they do not have access to the internet. Only government status employees only have limited 4 websites, okay? They can only get on like 4 different websites, which I think this is really neat. But, like, also to show you my show, that right there is called China Tonight, which this right here actually tells you in-depth stuff that you guys cannot, which sometimes talks about stuff that is beyond the firewall. Okay? Because, like, for instance, this right here, so that right there is, like, for instance, so that right there is like talking about what's going on the inside of China, which Which honestly, if you guys are in China right now, you guys probably wouldn't believe, like, won't be saying, like, oh, plus, like, also, also looking around, like, at the many different Rayo stuff that is from, like, these different places. I understand that some places do not allow you to bring radio scanners on onto your base or to, for instance, like a casino, because, like, for a couple times I tried to use a casino browser or, like, get on their computer system there, which, like, for instance, because, like, also, plus, like, also looking around, like, like, like at the many different radio stuff that you guys can look at. Like, for instance, like like a lot of different places, like, use, for instance, like Caesars Entertainment, they use, like, trunk radio systems and, like, DMR radios. So, like the little companies, like, for instance, like French Lick Resort, like, for instance, like Hard Rock, they both use, like, a system that is called an NXDN, which is Next Generation NextRad. Plus, like, also looking around, like, at the many different radio stuff. Plus, like, also showing you guys, like, that's what my outside looks like tonight. It's just a really simple area. It's like, for instance, like, looking around, like, at the different radio stuff that is from the online universe. You guys can look up the radio frequencies, like, for instance, on RareReference.com. You guys can also look up radio stations that's in your area, which I like about this part, on a website that's called radiostationworld.net, which that website right there has lots and lots of stuff you guys can do, like, for instance, like, on a radio scanner format, like, for instance, like, using, like, many different places. Plus, like, also, looking around, like, at the different radio stuff that, for instance, like, also, like for us, like, number one, if you guys use, like, radio scanners, like, for instance, like, in many different areas. Let's just say, for instance, let's just say, for instance, you guys are wanting to know what the radio frequencies are in Cancun, Mexico. Well, that right there is an interesting question because anytime I go on a cruise, I I do not even worry about my radio scanner because the only two places that I can pick that up in is the United States and Canada. But when I go to the Turks and Caicos, that's where I get to hear lots and lots and lots of communication. But it's like also looking around, like for instance, uh, looking at like the many different radio stuff that's in, like for instance, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and like for instance in Las Vegas too. You guys can look at those radio frequencies, which is like really big, a smart idea before you guys go on your trips to lay down the systems that you guys can listen to and like mark them out, like the different radio systems. Because like for instance, because like for instance, you guys, like for instance, like like on the different radio protocols, you guys can go look at those and see what they are like. But like also, but like also looking around, like it's so many like different places, like hotels and like all those. All them has their own radio program system, which is really kind of nice. Plus they also have, when you guys go there to like the hotels, you guys see people sometimes in their ears, which always has down to their shirts, which also there's like a radio that goes all the way down here, which you guys sometimes see like in a theater. That right there is like when you guys get your close radio frequency, and that's when you guys get it all together. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. If you guys liked it, make sure you guys give it a big thumbs up. And if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell, and I'll see you guys back in another video, and goodbye.